Hi, fifth grade. So this is my video explaining the review and helping you work on through the review. So I'm glad that you are practicing at home. So if we look at the first problem, it says Lila collected honey from 3 of her beehives. From the first hive, she collected 1/3 gallon of honey. The last 2 hives, she yielded 2/4 gallons each. So each one. How many gallons of honey did she collect in all? Draw a tape diagram to support your answer. Well, I know that if she's collecting from 3 hives and they want to know how much in all, I know that I'm adding and I know I'm trying to find the total honey. So that would be my unknown. That would be exactly adding those 3 together. She has 3 hives. So I'm going to be combining 3 amounts. The first one is 1/3. And the next 2 are 2/4 each. So I know I need to add all 3 amounts of honey. Well, I notice right away that when I'm adding these 2 right here have a common denominator already. So it would probably be easiest for me, since it already has a common denominator, nothing to set up, if I add these first. So 2/4 plus 2/4 is 4/4, which is basically just a fancy form of 1. So adding these 2 together make the most sense. Then I'm going to add on. Sorry, it's third. I'll fix this. My bad. Third. So then my second problem, I'm going to do 1 whole plus 1/3. And if I add that, I don't have, so this is technically, remember, like a 0/3 here. So 0/3 plus 1/3 is 1/3. 1 plus nothing is 1. So the total amount she collected was 1 1/3. Go back up to my label. It's labeled gallons. Making sure we're labeling correctly, and there's our final answer. Now for the next problem. It says, after using some of the honey she collected for baking, Lila found that she only had 3/4 a gallon of honey left. How much honey did she use for baking? Support your answer using diagrams, numbers, and words. So this is what she collected. So we will be using this down here. So we know how much total she had. She used some, and then she had some left. So looking at our tape diagram, this would be our total. She only had 3/4 gallons left. And then she used some for baking. But what we don't know is what she used for baking. So our 3/4 gallons would go here because that's what she had left. Here's our question mark. We don't know what she used for baking. So if I look at this tape diagram, I can see that if I would add baking and 3/4 together, it would equal 1 1/3 gallons, the total that she had. But in this case, I am missing one of my parts, so therefore I need to take my whole and subtract my part to get my other part. So I'm going to do 1 1/3 minus 3/4. We know with our problems, our first step is to set everything up for success. Don't forget to bring that whole number over. Now that we have set up for success, I'm taking a look at my denominators. So my denominators right now are 3 and 4. I need to come up with a common denominator. So listing out those multiples, I have 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 4, 8, 12. And there's our match. So 12 is going to be our common denominator. Now I'll come up with my fancy form of 1 to complete my equivalent fraction. 4 times 1 is 12. This would be 3/3. 9 times 3 is 9. Or sorry, 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 12. This would be 4/4. 1 times 4 is 4. So I'm subtracting. Now I'm ready to subtract. I'm going 4/12 minus 9/12. Well, if I only have 4/12, I can't subtract 9/12. So I'm going to have to rename this 1 as a fancy form of 1, therefore using 12ths, that way I have the same denominator. So I'm going to rename this as 12 twelfths. Still 1, didn't change the value. So now at the top, I have 12 twelfths and 4 twelfths. I need to combine those, so 12 twelfths and 4 twelfths is a total of 16 twelfths. So now I can subtract. 16 twelfths minus 9 twelfths is 7 twelfths. I no longer have a whole number, so my answer is 7 twelfths. How much honey did she use for baking? It was in gallons, so she used 7 twelfths gallons. And that's the final answer to that question. All right, let's move on to the third question. So it says, with the remaining 3/4 gallon of honey, Lila decided to make some loaves of bread and several batches of cookies for her school bake sale. The bread needed 1/3 gallon of honey, and the cookies needed 1/4. How much honey was left over? Support your answer using a diagram, number, and words. So we know what her whole is. She totally had 3/4. That's what all she had left, because remember, she used it on the other page. So she had 3/4 left. That's our whole. That's all the honey that she had. She then made cookies and bread. So we have cookies, we have bread, and then there was some left over. So we know what the bread was. It was 1/3. We know the cookies were 1/4. What we do not know is what was left over. So once again, looking at this tape diagram, these are my 3 parts. I only have 2 of the parts. So what I'm going to need to do first is to add these 2. Once I add these 2, I'll be able then to take 3/4, subtract this, and get this other part. So let's set ourselves up for success for 1/3 plus 1/4. That's my first step. Looking at 3 and 4, I think we just did that. We listed out our multiples right here. So instead of listing them out again, I can just look here. 12 was a common denominator I'm going to use for 3 and 4. Come up with my fancy form of 1. This is 3/3. So 1/4 is equivalent to 3/12. This is 4/4. 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. I'm adding, because I'm combining the parts. I get 7/12. So that's what she used for cooking. But she used it from this. So now that I know that this is 7/12, I know that 7/12 plus something is going to equal 3/4. So that means I need to subtract 7/12 from 3/4. So I'm going to do 3/4 minus 7/12. Going to set up my problem. Okay, the mistake that I see a lot of 5th graders do is they want to take this 7/12 and then subtract 3/4. You're not subtracting the whole from the part. You are subtracting the part from the whole, this number. So looking at what our denominators are, 4 and 12. Well, looking at my multiples of 4, I notice that 12 is a multiple of 4. So therefore, 12 would make the most sense to use as our common denominator. This one becomes very easy. 4 times 1 is 12, 3/3. So if you notice, our whole 3/4 is 9/12. So it was the whole, it is the larger fraction. So 9/12 minus 7/12 is 2/12. And that was what they said, how much honey was left over. It's in gallons. So 2/12 gallon of honey left over. And that is one more problem. So this one's a tricky one, so you kind of got to read through it. Lila decided to make more baked goods for a bake sale. She used 1/8 pound less flour to make bread than to make cookies. So less flour for bread than cookies. That's important to know. So I'm actually going to draw that real quick to remind myself. So there's bread. And then cookies is actually going to be more. So then it says she used 1/4 pound more flour to make cookies than to make brownies. If she used 3/4 pounds of flour to make bread, how much flour did she use to make brownies? So we're going to need all three of them. We're going to need bread, cookies, and brownies. So what we know already is bread. They said it's 3/4, so I could label that. So now let's look at cookies first. We'll worry about brownies later. Let's look at cookies. It says she used 1/8 less flour to make bread than to make cookies. So that means she still used 3/4 to make cookies, but 1/8 less for bread. So that means for our cookies, we're going to have to add 3/4 plus 1/8 in order to figure out our cookies. So let's do our cookies first. So we're going to set up 3/4 plus 1/8. We're going to start out by setting everything up. So we're set up for the success. Our denominators are 4 and 8. Listing those out. It's 4, 8. Oh, I'm going to stop there because I hope you're noticing that 8 is one of ours. So our very first multiple for 8 would be 8. So 8 will be the common denominator that we use. This one's very easy. It stays looking exactly the same. 4 times what is 8? 2 halves. That's 6/8. We're adding them 6/8, and 1/8 is 7/8. So 7/8 pounds, and this was for cookies. All right, now that we have this information, let's see if we can figure out the next part. So we've got the cookies. She used 1/4 more flour to make cookies than to make brownies. So that means cookies are more. So cookies was 7/8. And brownies, we don't know what it is, but they're going to be less. So notice I drew it smaller. And how much less? 1/4 less. So we have to subtract 1/4 from the cookies to get the brownies. So I'm going to take the cookies minus the 1/4 to get the brownies. Start by setting everything up. So looking at that, a 4 and 8, we just did that. 8 would make the most sense. So now it's 7/8 minus 2/8 is 5/8 pounds of flour for brownies. And that's the question they were asking for. How much flour did she use to make brownies? So this is the number, the one that I'm going to box because that's my final answer. All right. See you later. Bye.